42 events. That's the total amount of events right now during the Olympics. It's kind of hard to avoid it, so I'm sure most of you guys do know the Olympics are going on right now in Paris. And recently, after looking at all the events they had, it kind of dawned on me that there's a lot of events. And honestly, some of these events I've never even heard of or don't even know. And so considering the amount of events, I figured there'd surely be some boring ones. And after researching, I think I'm pretty right. There are a few sports that I would say seem very, very boring to the average person. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure if you are a particular fan about this specific sport, if you're like one of the 10 total fans that exist, then I'm sure it is interesting. And obviously, I'm not saying that these sports aren't difficult. I'm just saying from the normal person, it seems very boring to watch. So, yeah, I'm just going to be going over a few that I found that seem, not particularly entertaining or, popular. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the first event that I'm going to be talking about is a event that you probably have never heard of. Like, I've never heard of this until I had to research this, and it's called the Modern Pentathlon. And it's essentially this sport or event where you first do fencing, then you do swimming, you do horse riding, and then you shoot while running. Or to be more specific, you shoot a laser pistol at a target while running, I think, a 3-kilometer course, which is about 2 miles for those who use freedom units. And if you are a smart individual who probably got all A's, you probably noticed that all 4 of these events seem something like, a soldier back in the 19th century would have to excel at. And if you're able to guess that, then you'd be correct, because that is what this event is sort of based off of. And sort of despite this sort of conglomerate of events, I'd say it is one of the more boring events to watch. Just, first of all, it is sort of confusing, especially for the, normal viewer who's not really into this specific sport. I'd be very confused, and obviously if you're confused, you're not really going to be able to enjoy watching the sport. And apparently, even the Olympic Committee itself agrees, and it's had to try to justify that, this sport belonged to the Olympics many times. And right now, they are still trying to maximize the sport's appeal by, changing specific events. But at that point, they would have to start changing the actual core of the sport or event itself, in which case it wouldn't really be the same sport anymore. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of a fine line. Now, next up we have race walking. Now, race walking is it's kind of a joke stock at this point. Oftentimes people make fun of it, where, it's just kind of essentially everybody looks like they're about to use the bathroom. They have to go really badly, but they can't exactly run, so they're trying to get there as fast as they can without having to, upset their bowel movements. And one really surprising thing you might not know is that technically it's not illegal to have both feet above the ground at the same time. It's apparently just based off if you can tell in real time. So, obviously if you are playing it in slow motion, then you'll probably catch a lot of the top walkers, I almost said runners, top walkers with both feet off the ground, but that is completely legal. So it's essentially just kind of a race to see who can get away with the most amount of running while making it seem like walking. So, it's just kind of a weird sport overall. I don't really understand why we have it when we already have like running sports that are already that long, like the marathon. So yeah, that's I don't think this is too much of a hot take. I think most people would agree with this, but yeah, sorry if you are a race walking fan or a race walker yourself. Now, this next one might be a little bit more of a hot take, because it's going to be from track and field, but specifically the throwing events, or specifically shot put. Now, unlike other, throwing events like the javelin, which you can really tell that they're throwing it very, very far, and it's very impressive to see, the shot put is a little bit different because they're throwing a small-looking metal ball, supposedly far, but, to the average person that doesn't really know the sport, doesn't really look that far, and it's kind of boring. And a really easy way, in my opinion, to kind of improve the viewership of this sport, or kind of be able to tell, is to actually put a normal person right next to them, and so that they can actually kind of tell how impressive the person that is, the professional athletes doing this is. Because if it's just a bunch of professional athletes, the baseline expectation is already set up so high, especially because all of these people already made it to the Olympics. Like, it's very difficult to tell how impressive this event is. And so it just kind of looks like they're throwing a bunch of rocks, kind of far, and that's really all it looks like. So yeah, I think this kind of goes for like most of the track events, in my opinion. Even like the races, like especially, you know, the longer distance races like the 5,000 meters, like you can't really tell how fast they're going unless you actually had somebody running alongside it. Then you can really tell, like, wow, these guys are actually really fast. But if not, then it just looks like a bunch of people jogging around a track, and it's not that exciting. Now, the last sport that I'm going to be going over is marathon swimming. Now, I would say this definitely goes up there in rankings if we were to rank the sports out of how difficult they are, because not only is swimming itself difficult, you are swimming for about 6.2 miles, or 10 kilometers, and that's really, really long. You know, so the swimmers are swimming there for very, very long times. But that doesn't exactly mean that it is really entertaining. Now, we already have the marathon, which, you know, people are running. So I don't really know why we would need to have another marathon where people are swimming instead. And the one key difference between these two sports is that at least for the running marathon, you can kind of see the athletes, you can see their faces, you can see their facial expressions, you know, how hard it is for them, you know, if one of them is looking a lot better than the other, you can really tell easily. But compare that to swimming, in which people are always underwater. And so you can't even really tell how they're feeling, how they're looking, because you know, they're underwater. Not to mention that, you know, the athletes themselves can't even really tell where the opponents are because they're underwater. So yeah, that's just kind of the main thing. Don't get me wrong now, this seems like a very difficult sport. I would never be able to do it, but just my opinion, I don't really think it seems that very entertaining or smart to have two very similar events, just one a bit less entertaining. So that's just my opinion. So yeah, that's gonna be about it for this video. I do apologize in advance if anybody kind of is, you know, angry at whatever I said today. But yeah, that's just my genuine opinions as somebody who's not directly interested in these sports, as just like a person who casually watches the events. Just a few that stood out as particularly not as interesting. So yeah, that's gonna be about it for this video.